This is the Nancy Stevens Lifestyle Show here on the New Horizon Radio. In association with Haversley, experts in the sale of lettings, estate agency and block management businesses. If you're thinking of selling now or in the next 5 years, get in touch. They're a friendly bunch at haversleygroup.com.
Welcome to the Nancy Stevens Lifestyle Show here on the New Horizon Radio. And a little bit about me, summer baby, sweet tooth gal and Zimbabwean born and bred. What have I been up to? Very busy, actually. I went to see The Last Laugh at Milton Keynes Theatre. Jurassic World. I had my hair done, so I'm feeling all very bougie with my fresh hair. I had a really exciting meeting, a collaboration meeting. More of that to come with Milton Keynes premier declutterer, so that's going to be really interesting, and a bridal event as well. What am I up to? Well, I've got my son's 28th birthday weekend. How am I the mother of a boy who's 28? Honestly, as a parent, that time just flies by so quickly. It feels like just yesterday he was a babe in my arms, and now he's my 28-year-old son and forging his way successfully in the world. And it honestly, it's such a cliche. And as a parent, I would say, just take your time to reflect and enjoy your kids, because they grow so quickly. And it's a precious thing. But yeah, being the mother of a nearly 30-year-old feels quite surreal, I'm not going to lie. I'm going to say totsiens, which is Afrikaans for goodbye to my brother, one of my brothers who's going back to South Africa. I'm going to be seeing The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. And if you've seen the floral display in Milton Keynes Centre, it is absolutely spectacular. Well worth just coming to the centre just to see this fantastic floral arrangement, and also seeing Calamity Jane at Milton Keynes Theatre. On today's show, I'm going to be talking about The Last Laugh, as I say, Jurassic World, working with Waterstones, talking about the debut novel called The Names, and taking the salt path with a pinch of salt. And working with Waterstones. So I'm going to review a couple of books, but I'm going to start with one that I didn't enjoy. So I think it's important that I'm authentic in my reviews. I don't always want to stand here and go, oh my God, this book was amazing, when it isn't. And, not all the books I read are amazing, and not all the shows I see are amazing, not all the films I see are amazing. So I think as a reviewer, it's really important that I'm authentic and honest with you. So this book is it's called The Safekeep, and it is the Women's Prize shortlisted for Fiction 2025 for the Booker Prize. I didn't really like it, if I'm really honest. There's been so much hype about this book, and I do worry sometimes when there is a lot of hype about something. Is it going to live up to the hype? For me personally, it didn't. And when I used to belong to a book club many years ago, I did find the Booker Prize winners, or the ones that were shortlisted, I really struggled with, and I don't know why that is. I don't know whether it's a coincidence, but there's very few books that have won the prize that I've actually loved. So I know that sounds really controversial, but this book I just couldn't get into. it. And I will always give a book a chance, like a film, like a theatre show. I will always give it a good half an hour of my time, and to see whether I can invest. But I feel if I'm not investing straight away, it's probably not going to happen. The writing's really small as well, which didn't help my nearly 60-year-old eyesight as well. But yeah, it just didn't resonate. But I'd be interested to know what your thoughts are. If you've read The Safekeep, let me know your thoughts, because obviously I'm in the minority. Lots of people loved it. As I say, Booker Prize 24 shortlisted. Really curious to hear your thoughts on The Safekeep. But it is available at Waterstones. On the other hand, this book, oh my goodness. Ta-da! With the interest of the video. It's called The Names, and it's the debut novel from Flora Knapp. And now this book was really special. I really love this book. And as I say, you win some, you lose some. The last book I just discussed, I lost it. This one is a winner, 100% winner. I haven't read a book like this in a while, in terms of like the concept. The whole concept is sliding doors. And yeah, it's called The Names, and it is heart-wrenching. It's utterly original, which Jojo Moyes says, and I couldn't echo that sentiment much more. Truly gorgeous, a tour de force of storytelling, mesmerising and profound. I'm in awe, powerful, moving and beautiful, which so says Marion Keyes. So amazing reviews, all perfectly justified. The premise of this, I'm gonna read what it's about, but I'm also going to tell you what I thought of it, because it was a really, a sliding doors moment. So tomorrow, if morning comes, the storm stops raging, Cora will register the name of her son, or perhaps, as this is her real concern, she'll formalise who he will become. It's 1987, and in the aftermath of a great storm, Cora sets out with her 9-year-old daughter to register the birth of her son. Her husband intends for her to follow a long-standing family tradition and call the baby after him, but when faced with a decision, Cora hesitates. Going against his wishes is a risk that will have consequences, but is it right for her child to inherit his name from generations of domineering men? The choice she makes in this moment will shape the course of their lives. 7 years later, her son is Bear, a name chosen by his sister and one that will prove as cataclysmic as the storm from which it emerged. Or is he Julian, the name his mother set her heart on, believing it would enable him to become his own person? Or is it Gordon, named after his father and raised in his cruel image? But is there still a chance to break the mold? Powerfully moving and full of hope, this is a story of 3 names, 3 versions of a life, and the infinite possibilities that a single decision can spark. It is the story of one family and love's endless capacity to endure, no matter what fate has in store. And it's such an interesting concept about how a name can change your personality and determine the way you're going to be. And all these boys, the names that they had, the outcome of their lives was completely different and sad, moving, scary, but mostly as a mother, interesting that, how you name your children is so, so important. And for me personally, as a mother, Henry was always Henry's my eldest. We had some ideas, but I had a horrendous birth, and my husband named him, and that was absolutely fine, because when I came around after my emergency cesarean, I was presented with Henry John, and he was a Henry, and he's always been Henry, and Henry was the second name of my father-in-law, so his grandfather, and John was my father's name. So it just and he was always Henry John, and then Benji was always going to be Benji. I always knew if I had a second child, he was going to be Benjamin. So, and they very much suit their names, and it's crazy how you suit your name. And at school, I hated being a Nancy. I absolutely hated being Nancy. I was a kind of geeky child. I was the odd one out, and then I just had this weird name. So it just kind of made me weird. But you know what? In later life, my weirdness is my superpower. My eccentricity, my difference is because of my name, and it really, really does make a difference. So yeah, it's. Honestly, this is such a thought-provoking book, and so the different outcomes from how you name your child is well, as I say, the names. Flora Knapp is just, honestly, this is just such a beautiful book, and as a parent will really, really resonate. The names is available at Waterstones, Milton Keynes. Cineworld review. I went to see Jurassic World. Oh my goodness, a whole lot of dinosaurs. I'm not going to lie. If I'm really honest, I went to see Jonathan Bailey and his sexy specs, because there's been lots of press coverage about it, and these specs that have become, I think it's a bit like Paul Mescal's pendant when he was in Normal People. I think these specs are going to have their own Instagram account, because the specs were the thing. I love Jonathan Bailey. Everyone who knows me knows how obsessed I am with him, because I think he's a fabulous actor, a fabulous human being, and he has usurped Hugh Jackman in my heart. There, just said it. But just an all-round brilliant actor, fantastic musical theatre star, and I say very, very easy on the eye. Anyway, I digress. The premise is Zora Bennett, who is played by Scarlett Johansson, who's actually really, really good in it, leads a team of skilled operatives to the most dangerous place on Earth, research facility for the original Jurassic Park. And their mission, should you choose to accept it, is to secure genetic material from dinosaurs whose DNA can provide life-saving benefits to mankind. I mean, I don't know. How plausible is that? Well, it's not, because obviously it's dinosaurs. I really did have to suspend belief. I mean, I know it's about dinosaurs. I went because I was curious to see how it compared to the one that I saw, 1993. So this is the 7th in the series. So that's a long time ago. That's 30 odd years ago. God, is it 30 years? Where has 30 years gone? God, I just can't believe it. Anyway, for me, it was a whole lot of dinosaur. I was exhausted. I felt like I'd birthed a dinosaur by the end of it. It was just frenetic, and I know that's what it's supposed to be about, but it wasn't my thing. It really, really wasn't my thing. I mean, if you like dinosaurs, you're going to love it. I mean, the only thing I would say that is different, that has changed, is that the CGI is way improved. But it's, good versus evil. And, you've always got the obligatory baddie who was sort of Rupert Friend, who plays the baddie. He always plays a baddie, and that he starts off and he's super charming, typical Brit, really charming. Why is it always the Brits are baddies in movies? I mean, do we play such good baddies? I know that's a contradiction in terms, but he always plays he's always really nice on the surface, and then he ends up being the bad guy. Anyway, so yes, of course, he is the bad guy and wants to procure the DNA for his own devious purposes. So yeah, that's what it is. And there's a family involved, and Scarlett and Jonathan Bailey are just doing their thing and trying to save the world, and it's just all very ridiculous. So, but as I say, if you like dinosaurs, you'll love Jurassic World. I keep wanting to call it Jurassic Park because that's in my head. That's what I saw all those years ago. But yeah, Jurassic World is on at Cineworld, Milton Keynes. And I'm reviewing The Last Laugh, which was on at Milton Keynes last week, and it is touring the UK. So The Last Laugh is the story of Bob Monkhouse, Eric Morecambe, and Tommy Cooper. So the premise, it's set in a dressing room, and there's three comedians, 1,000 laughs. There were not 1,000 laughs from me. This is a face of someone who is utterly perplexed, if I'm honest. To be honest with you, I knew I was going to find it quite a hard watch in that I didn't grow up in the UK. So this comedy was utterly alien to me. But having said that, in my defense, I grew up with British television. When we got a TV, when I turned sort of 15, 16, we got a telly, and I watched people like Dave Allen, who I thought was brilliant. That observational, that really clever humour where he could just sit on a chair and just talk. I just thought Dave Allen was the best. I still think Dave Allen, hands down, for me personally, is my comedian. And I absolutely love the two Ronnies as well. I mean, their Four Candles sketch is absolutely fantastic. And the whole, the double act, it just worked. And I did actually like Morecambe and Wise. The toast to see the breakfast scene is classic. And so I did know who they were. I have seen clips of it. But again, I think you had to grow up in the UK. So, it was part of your DNA. It was part of your sort of British childhood, watching these comedians on stage, and they were all very different. I think that's what the show was trying to portray, that they all had very different humour. And I've interviewed people like Barry Cryer, so old school comedians who are brilliant writers, and these guys were brilliant at what they did. It wasn't my vibe. And I've interviewed Des O'Connor. I mean, Des O'Connor, I have such a lovely story about Des O'Connor. And when I first started on radio, 15 years ago, I think it was, Des O'Connor was one of my first celebrity guests. And we did a phone interview, and he was so lovely. And you just get a warm, friendly, fuzzy feeling over the phone. And he just he emanated such happy, positive vibes. And I remember I could hear, when you can feel someone smiling when you're talking on the phone, you can sense it. I sensed that the whole way through our interview he was smiling. And he said something about Nancy with the laughing face, or Nancy with a smiling face, and I never forgot that. He was so sweet, such a gent, old school comedy. And then I saw him at the Stables many years later, and he was so kind and remembered me, and he was just a delightful man. So This and Bob Monkhouse was of that ilk, that very sort of gentlemanly, well dressed, well turned out, that kind of humour as well. So three very different comedians. I never got the Tommy Cooper thing. I never got the fact, he could just walk on stage and people would laugh. He'd just stand there and go, or just pull this weird face and people laugh. And obviously he was a comedy genius. People loved it. And obviously to the point when he actually died on stage and people thought that was part of the act. And I remember seeing a YouTube clip of that and just thinking, oh my God, do people not know what's happening? And they didn't, because they thought it was part of the act. And that is just, that was quite shocking for me, actually, that someone actually died on stage and the audience didn't actually know that this was happening. But going back to that old school comedy, I mean, Dave Allen, brilliant. The two Ronnies, I say Morecambe and Wise were fantastic together. It was interesting to see how they reacted with each other, because as I say, they all were very, very different in their styles of comedy, and they were there's sort of gentle ribbing of each other. Of the way that they sort of did their comedy, and Bob Monkhouse was very sort of planned, and he liked to analyse his jokes. Tommy Cooper, as I say, would just stand there, and Eric Morecambe was, I don't know, he seems such a lovely guy, but his success was with Ernie. I mean, the two of them were just so linked together. So I didn't love it, but it wasn't because it wasn't a great show. The actors were fantastic, and the audience around me loved it. My friend Nikki, who came with me, she absolutely loved it because she's British, born and bred, and she grew up with this comedy. So I think if you are born in the UK and this is in your DNA and your TV part of your TV childhood, The Last Laugh is a great show. And this is an interesting link that's coming up now. I reviewed The Salt Path, the movie, a few months ago, and it was a film I had really, really loved. Completely fallen in love with it. Didn't know anything about the couple, and I was so invested in the film that to find out that allegedly a lot of this is not necessarily true has been quite a shock for a lot of people. It's been all over the news, and I'm not someone who does topic. I'm never purporting to be sort of delivering like topical information on my show. That's not what I'm about. But this film really meant a lot to me, and it meant a lot to a lot of people. The book has meant a lot to a lot of people. So that it's a true life story, allegedly, of Raina and Mothwin, who are a couple who had lost it all and had walked the salt path to the south coast of England. And we all fell a little bit in love with them, their story. Say they'd lost their house, they'd lost everything. They were homeless, and they decided they were going to do this epic walk. Moth had been diagnosed with CBD, which is a degenerative illness. This particular illness has, not a great outcome. It is basically terminal. But what's happened since then, and has been quite shocking. So a journalist from The Observer has uncovered the fact that not necessarily all of it is particularly true, allegedly. So it would now appear that Raina, and that's not her real name, actually stole £86,000 from her husband's company. That's a lot of money. And that particular that person that they stole from obviously lost everything, so they went bankrupt. So then the couple then borrowed £100,000 from a family friend, and when that friend faced financial difficulties, debt collectors recouped the debt by taking their home. That's not what was portrayed in the movie. What was portrayed in the movie and the book is that they had lost everything due to the fact that Wynne, the husband, had been swindled by a family friend. So they'd invested and the investment had gone wrong. So it felt like a very much, this is a really bad thing that has happened to us. But apparently this is not the case at all. So they weren't indeed homeless. The worst thing, as I say, that they're saying is that they said Moth had CBD and was terminal, but in fact still alive and well and living very, very well 12 years later, which again apparently with CBD is practically unheard of. So I'd be interested to know what people think. How are you feeling? Because this movie, everybody is, most people have read the book or seen the movie and certainly know what's going on. I'd be really interested to know how you feel. And I know this happens. I know artistic license is a thing when you're writing a life story. And I'm one of these days when I do finish my book, I'm writing what I call a dramatized autobiography. So, but I would always say that it's a lot of these things that have happened to me or other people are dramatized for the sake of making it a little bit more interesting. But at no point was this declared as being true. This was their story. This was a true story, based on a true story. And the movie was brilliant, starring Gillian Anderson and Jason Isaacs. And the movie was doing really, really well for a small movie that a lot of people hadn't heard of, but they'd read the book. Has gained a lot of traction, but now all the book signings have stopped. I don't know what they're going to do regarding sort of distribution of the movie, but it feels massively disappointing that you've invested in this couple's story and you think this has been the most heartwarming story, this couple that faced adversity and lost everything. And, he was, say, diagnosed with CBD and they had nothing, not a penny. I remember in the movie that they portray that they got down to £1.34 when they put their car in the cash machine. There was literally nothing left. And, you see them doing this beautiful walk. But apparently it appears, and again, this is all allegedly, that someone with CBD would not have been able to do such an extreme walk. That's probably, maybe it wasn't necessarily what exactly happened. So yeah, it's all left a little bit of a bitter taste in one's mouth. And, one sort of thinks, should we take this with, take the salt path with a pinch of salt. And I tell you what it does have. It has echoes of the Captain Tom story, and that makes me very sad. And I just want to say thank you to my listeners and my viewers, because I have these amazing listeners and viewers, and I would love to know who you are. I would love more interaction. Please leave a review, a comment, a like, whatever, just so I know who you are. If there's anything you'd like me to cover in terms of topics, any guests, I have a waiting list for guests, which is a lovely position to be in. But if there's something that you want to talk about that we've not discussed already, I'd love to hear from you. It's _Nancy MK_. It's been a great show. Thank you so much. This is the Nancy Stevens Lifestyle Show. Have an amazing week.